Welcome to the Crazy Alchemist Podcast, where alchemy, occultism, and strange history come alive.
In the reign of the Roman Emperor Tiberius, somewhere between the years 14 and 37 of the Common Era, a merchant ship from Italy was becalmed in the evening near the small islands of Paxi in the Ionian Sea. A voice called out 3 times from Paxi to the pilot at the stern of the ship. The pilot was an Egyptian called Themis. The voice ordered him, when he came opposite the place named Palodes, to announce that great Pan was dead. Themis did as he was told. As soon as the words were spoken, a great cry of lamentation, not of one person but of many, mingled with exclamations of amazement, rose from the shore. This is the only passage in any classical author that reports the death of a Greek god. The story is told by Plutarch, the Greek-speaking priest of Apollo at Delphi, in his dialogue on the obsolescence of oracles, chapter 17. When Tiberius heard about it, he summoned the Egyptian pilot to Rome and had his philologists investigate. We never find out what they concluded. The god in question is Pan, the Arcadian goat god of flocks and wild places. The Homeric hymn to Pan calls him the son of Hermes by the rich-tressed daughter of Dryops. His cult home is the rugged interior of the Peloponnese, with the principal sanctuary on Mount Lycaon. His attributes are 2 short horns, a beard, goat legs and cloven hooves, the syrinx, which is the 7-reed panpipes, and a notorious appetite for nymphs. He plays through the wooded glades with dancing nymphs along the edges of cliffs. He is also responsible for sudden waves of irrational terror that hit a flock or a battle line with no visible cause. From that fear, English has its word panic. After the Athenian victory at Marathon in 490 BCE, the Athenians instituted a sanctuary to Pan in a cave on the north slope of the Acropolis. Herodotus tells the story behind that decision. The Athenian runner Phidippides, on his way to Sparta to ask for help against the Persians, met Pan on Mount Parthenion in Arcadia. Pan reproached him for the Athenian neglect of his cult and promised future aid. After the victory, the Athenians built the sanctuary. The cave is still there. There is also one Pan site outside Greece worth knowing about. At the foot of Mount Hermon, in what is today the Golan Heights, a cave spring was identified with Pan from at least the 3rd century BCE. The Greeks called the place Panaeon, the Romans called it Banias, and the modern Arabic name Banias preserves the original. The sanctuary received animal sacrifices thrown directly into the chasm in the cave floor. It is also, in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, the place where Jesus turns to Peter and asks, "Who do men say that I am?" Peter answers from the steps of Pan's cave. The cult of Pan, in other words, was active across the entire eastern Mediterranean for at least 500 years before Plutarch's pilot heard the voice on the water.
So what did the pilot actually hear? Plutarch attributes the story to the rhetorician Epitherses, the father of his friend Aemilianus. He himself does not interpret it as the death of paganism. That reading is added 2.5 centuries later by the Christian historian Eusebius of Caesarea in the early 4th century. Eusebius exploits a pun that the Greek word pan also means all, to reframe the death of great Pan as the moment Christ's exorcisms drove the pagan gods out of the world. It is theology, not history. The cults of Pan continued for centuries after the reign of Tiberius. The Banias sanctuary at Mount Hermon was still functioning into late antiquity. There is a second modern reading worth knowing. Robert Graves, in The Greek Myths of 1955, suggested that the cry was originally a ritual lament for the Mesopotamian dying god Tammuz. Tammuz, Tammuz, the all-great Tammuz is dead. Misheard by Greek listeners as great Pan is dead. That is the Graves thesis, not the modern consensus. It is one interesting reading among several. What is firm is the Plutarch text itself, which remains the strangest moment in any pagan author. What did happen historically is that Pan's distinctive iconography, the horned, goat-legged figure of the woodlands, became one of the main visual sources from which late antique and medieval Christian artists assembled the image of the devil. The horned head, the cloven hoof, the goat legs, the long pointed tongue. The visual furniture of the medieval Lucifer is essentially Pan in Christian costume. At the end of the 19th century, the British folklorist Margaret Murray attempted to read the medieval witch trials as the persecution of a surviving pre-Christian fertility cult whose horned god was a continuation of Pan. Murray's witch cult thesis is now considered pseudo-history by mainstream historians. It was, however, historically influential. It shaped Gerald Gardner's Wicca in the 1950s, where the horned god is once again the central male divinity, and through Wicca, it became the horned god figure of the contemporary neo-pagan revival. The god the Egyptian pilot was told to announce dead, in other words, did not stay dead. He survived in Christian iconography as the visual template of the devil, in modern English as the word panic, and 2,000 years later he turned up again as the central male deity of a religion that was invented in the middle of the 20th century from the very witch trial records his own horns and hooves had helped to create.
The full article on Pan, with the bibliography and the source documents listed, is on the site at crazyalchemist.com. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts for more bestiary entries and for deeper dives into the history of esotericism and the dark corners of belief. Next time, we go further north and further into the bone, the Greenlandic Inuit Tupilok, the killing familiar made in secret by a shaman from animal bones and parts of a dead child sent into the sea to kill a named enemy in what happened when one of them was finally carved for an ethnographer in 1905. Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to visit crazyalchemist.com for more intriguing content and follow Crazy Alchemist on Instagram and Facebook to stay connected.